Stream is good. We are live soon.
Well, welcome everybody to the Riverside Business Chamber's virtual Business After Hours event for May 2020. My name is Mark Kimber. I'm the Executive Officer for the Riverside Business Chamber, and welcome. I'd like to welcome all our members and guests, and we're using the life-size video conferencing app. A big thank you to Robert and Cedar from Life-Size. Time, anywhere video conferencing. Easily start, join a video chat meeting from your laptop, tablet or phone, 4K screen sharing, 300-way video calls, meetings encrypted by default, stream and record any meeting, broadcast live events for up to 10,000 concurrent viewers. I thoroughly recommend Life-Size, and please reach out to Life-Size if you need any more information. Thank you to our support partners, City of Ryde, EasyNet and Max My Profit Ryde, and thank you to our patron member, ServeCorp. In these challenging and fast-changing times, I invite all members to regularly check out our website for upcoming events, as well as for helpful content to assist businesses in maximising their online presence. Additionally, please check out our YouTube channel and the growing number of 60-second pictures from our membership. If you would like to be included, please email me at info@riversidechamber.com.au or contact Mr. Andrew Hill. I would now like to introduce tonight's host, Mr. Tony Abboud, our President of the Riverside Business Chamber. Over to you, Tony.
Thank you, Mark. Welcome all, and welcome to these strange times, unusual times, and our innovative way of staying together through Life-Size. Firstly, can I acknowledge our Level 1 members, ServeCorp, Achieve Australia, New Horizons, North Ryde RSL, Optus, The Range, and Royal Rehab. I'd like to also acknowledge and welcome tonight's guests. We have John Alexander, OAM MP, member for Bennelong. We have Victor Dominello, MP, member for Ryde. We have Jan Boulhali from the City of Ryde, who will all be speaking with us. And they'll be properly introduced a little bit further along. We're also going to tonight have a discussion with a few of our members around our interesting times, and obviously we're going to be focusing quite a lot about what we're all doing to not only survive but thrive in these times. We've said it before that we have to be very respectful and sort of share our sympathies with all of those who've been affected with COVID-19. You know, we pass on all our respects to those particularly those who've passed away. But we also have to look at it as an interesting time in terms of not only survival, but moving forward and looking at what are our opportunities. Written in the press about the way people are going to start doing things differently from now on, the way corporations are going to be sort of acting and interacting, some of the things that we're going to stop doing, some of the things that we're going to start doing, and some of the things that we're going to change. And obviously at Riverside Business Chamber, we're interested in all of those things from the point of view of our members, but more importantly, we're interested in all of those points of views or those things, particularly as far as the City of Ryde and Macquarie Park is concerned. Now, you know, for us, it's really important that we stay together. Last time we said that whilst we're socially distant, that doesn't mean we can't be closer. And staying closer has a different definition today. I've said it before, one of the first things I'm going to do once all these restrictions are finished is go and hug a waiter, because I miss them. I haven't been to a cafe or restaurant for so long. I can't wait to get back to having a coffee and just chilling out at a cafe or restaurant. And, you know, we're all saying that once those things come back to us, a lot of our unemployment will disappear because all our hospitality will be back. No doubt the city of Ryde will reinstigate its nighttime economy strategy. Unfortunately, you can't have a nighttime economy if all the cafes and restaurants are closed. There's a lot of exciting things that are still going to happen, and later on we're going to talk about some of those things from a federal government point of view and a state government point of view that's going to work with us to sort of get things happening again. My reading suggests that after every pandemic there's a boom, and I'm looking forward for our boom. And a boom can have different definitions, and we're going to talk about for some of our businesses and some of our members what that boom means from their perspective. Now, I'd like to, before we have our first guest, John Alexander, who's coming on, and we're going to ask John a few questions. Can I perhaps ask one of our own members, one of our executive, Ivan? Are you there, Ivan? Can you hear me?
I am, Tony.
Okay, Ivan, I'm going to ask you a few questions around financials and the way the world is today. But before that, maybe if you can introduce yourself to all our members and you know what your line of business is.
Look, I'm Ivan Radoovnikovic. I'm the principal of Ryde Financial Services. We're a commercial finance brokerage business. The business is underpinned by my 40-odd years in banking and finance, and it's a business that started 3 years ago, at the ripe old age of 59. After all those years of experience, all of a sudden you become overqualified. So with the support of clients of the past and new clients, we've done very well. We're here to help business, small business, commercial, and that's our target market, predominantly within building construction and small business across the board, manufacturing, engineering. These are tough times that we're in now. And as you know, the government's got a special package there, up to $250,000 for those small businesses that can demonstrate a reduction in revenue of 30%. And not only in terms of historical results, but in terms of the impact of COVID-19 and the impact that has over the next 6 to 9 months. And if we can demonstrate a 30% expected forecast reduction in revenue, it means that small business can still apply. And we've got until the 30th of September this year to lodge an application. What a lot of people don't know is that small business still needs to demonstrate the ability to service this lending. Yes, there can be a deferral for the initial 6 months. The interest is compounded. The funding is still repayable within a 3-year period. I don't think a lot of people realise that. The banks at the moment are struggling. I know, you know, one of the majors currently is sitting on about 100,000 small business loan applications, which they need to process. The government ripping into the banks to accelerate the processing. There's a lot of paperwork happening. So these are tough times, as we know, but small business is the backbone of this country. I think we underestimate just how many people small business employ. We're here to help, and if I can help at all, please let me know.
Ivan, can I ask, is it easier to access, and this is not a trick question, but is it easier to access all of the incentives that are coming through from the both state and federal government, or is it better or easier to go to the bank or through yourself and access funds through the banks? And do the banks genuinely have a more lenient approach to supporting small business, or do you just give up and try and get what you can from the government?
Look, I think if you've got as a business, you've got a relationship with your own bank, that would be your first approach to work off the back of that relationship. And separate to that, if you do have an inclination to give me a call, I'm only too happy to talk to you and provide a bit of direction and guidance, maybe work with you in terms of your loan application. It does take a bit of time. I was told today by a major bank that loan applications, whilst you've got the 250 cap, you might only need 100,000 or 150, but every loan application that needs over 100,000 will require a cash flow forecast projection with detailed assumptions and notes as to how that cash flow was put together to give it a bit of credibility. Now, you're going to need to sit down with your accountant to do that, and that's just going to take a bit of time. These loans are not being processed overnight, but over 100,000 with one particular major bank, they require cash flow projections in every instance.
And we read a lot in the newspaper about it's all doom and gloom, particularly from a financial point of view and banks' point of view. You're in the finance industry. Do you actually see that a lot of these businesses are all going to go broke and it's all going to be doom and gloom like everyone's predicting, or do you see something different?
Look, I think the general consensus is that, you know, as we get out of this tunnel in terms of COVID-19, we are heading into a recession. We've got about $1.4 million 1.4 million employees out of work nationally, and that's a real worry. The sooner we get small business up and running, the sooner we get the stimulus and the economy on its way. And I know if we work together as a team, and that's our history, the ability to work as a team, we can get it going. But it's going to be tough. We are heading into a recessionary time, and there's no doubt about that at all.
It's interesting you say that, because I'm reading a lot of opposite to that. And it's, I think the world is split down the middle. Some people think we're going into a recession, a major recession. And a lot of people are saying we're probably going into one of our biggest booms ever. And both sides, like typical economists, can justify their point of view. I unfortunately am on the positive point of view. I actually think we're going up to probably going to have one of our biggest booms ever. And like all economists, I can probably justify my point of view as well. But I can tell you, in the industry that I'm in real estate, it's about to explode. In the month of April, when we were in what I call the eye of the storm, when it was right in the middle of this pandemic, when it was all doom and gloom, and we were going through the Easter period, which is traditionally slow, we had our biggest month of inquiry in probably 2.5 years in the month of April. And the reason for that is because we came into a market where there was very little stock, and there was so much demand, and people put their finger on the pause button and they've all banked up. And once that finger goes off the pause button, there's going to be a massive explosion, and we can already see that happening. We can see that in the employment, when the restaurants reopen, when the hospitality's back, when the shops are back, a lot of that supposed unemployment's going to disappear. We're also seeing, Woolworths can't hire enough people. Australia Post can't hire enough people. Amazon worldwide has said they want to hire 75,000 people. When the state government introduces their new package of $55 billion of infrastructure work, that's 40,000 new employees. And the governments are going to need all this activity and production because they need tax, because that's the way to pay back all this stimulus. So some of us are seeing a really big boom coming on, and others, no doubt, are seeing a major recession coming on. Only time will tell, I dare say.
Look, I hope it all unrolls, as you say, Tony. I really do. It's interesting what you say about the property, because we're seeing a lot of residential projects that are due to come on stream shortly over the next couple of months. And I'm talking about 600 and 700 unit towers that have been pre-sold 18 months or 24 months ago. The interesting thing that the banks are looking at there is the settlement risk. these purchasers, do they still have jobs? Do they still qualify? They would have got pre-approvals. Are they going to get their funding reapproved? And what are the valuers going to put on the stock as it completes? Because the banks will value on completion. Interesting times ahead. And again, I hope it all works out for the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Because all we're interested in is making sure all our members and the businesses have got an opportunity and can see and find opportunities in which to thrive in this environment. Because after adversity, there's always opportunity. It's the trick is to be able to identify it and then just follow it through. Now, I don't know, Mark, can I ask you, do we have our member for Bennelong online as yet?
John Alexander will be joining us very shortly. So we have some more questions for Ivan if you want, and he'll be joining us very shortly. He's just finishing a federal meeting.
Okay, because if John's going to be a little while, I could cross to Jan from the city of Ryde.
He said he was just finishing up.
Oh, he's finishing up. Sorry, Jan. He's
okay.
All right.
It's okay.
He's jumped in. One thing that I did want to talk about is that, and I don't know if Jan is aware of this, tomorrow I've got a meeting with the Mayor, City of Ryde, and that meeting is to discuss the civic precinct redevelopment. And we're talking about everything that the council's doing to fast-track the redevelopment of the civic centre. And at the end of that meeting, I'll send a report to the executive, and you'll be able to see, get an update as to what's happening within for the redevelopment of the civic centre up here at Top Ryde. I know a lot of you know the history of that, and a lot of you know that the building's been vacant for a few years. I never saw them myself, but they said that special forces had hired the building, and they were jumping off the roof and doing exercises, you know, for, you know, like all these SAS. And Jan, did that ever happen?
I haven't heard of this, Tony, to be honest.
Yeah, well, we heard that the special forces or some government agency with all these paramilitary type folk, they use this vacant building to jump off the roof and train and use exercises of how to, you know, climb buildings and all sorts of things. I never saw them, because if I ever did see them, I would have bought a packet of popcorn and sat there and watched them do it. But the building has been vacant ever since council moved out and moved to the binary centre at North Ryde. And for those of you who don't know the history, council moved to the binary centre at North Ryde because at the time, if you recall, there was potentially going to be the merger of the three councils, Ryde, Hunters Hill and Lane Cove. And where the council offices are today at the binary centre at North Ryde, strategically it would have been right in the heart of that combined amalgamated council area. As you know, the rest is history. Councils didn't in fact amalgamate. And so council is now looking to potentially come back up to Top Ryde. It's now a matter of getting this project done, because that old building up at Top Ryde, that dates back to the late 50s, early 60s. And at one stage, believe it or not, and a lot of the councillors of their day wanted to make that a heritage building. So in other words, we would be stuck with that building forever in its current red brick form. And a lot of people weren't happy about that. So that's something that is happening tomorrow, and I'll report back to everyone. So you'll all get an update of what's happening with the Ryde Civic Centre. Now, while we're waiting for John Alexander, I noticed Geoff Anderson. Geoff, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Welcome, Geoff.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Geoff, you've done, and I know I might be jumping the gun a little bit before Jan speaks, but you've done a webinar about how we can all embrace video, which is really, really relevant for our businesses in this day and age. Is that correct?
I've scheduled 5 webinars around about video production, yeah. So the first one starts on the 12th of May on Tuesday. They're all on Tuesdays at midday.
All right. Can you tell me why I or any of our members should participate in that webinar? What are we going to learn?
So I'm going to talk about the tips and tricks of making videos yourself. Given that we're very isolated these days, it's more important than ever that people are still engaging with their communities. And video is obviously a really powerful and effective way of doing that. And there's some really simple things, if you get it right, can make all the difference in terms of the quality of the video messaging you get out there. So the first video is going to talk a little bit about some of the simple essential tricks to doing videos yourself, what you need to think about to make sure you get it right. How much detail do you want me to go into, Tony?
Just an overview of the 5 webinars, so enough to sort of people to make a strategic decision and say, I need to participate in this webinar.
Sure. So that's the first one. It's really just giving a whole lot of essentials. Stuff you can do on your phone is basically it, or some tips if you're using DSLRs, just some real fundamental stuff. Then I look into the following Tuesday, the 19th of May. I'm going to go a bit into captions and other elements of enhancing your video production. So where you can get some library music, some stock footage, and other resources to enhance it. And the importance of captions on videos, given that most people are watching the online videos mute. So how to get access to those, how to do that. I'll then look on the 26th of May, another Tuesday at midday, 5 videos to make now. So some tips on, because some people think, yeah, I know I need video, but what video do I need? What should I be making? And so I'll break down some essential videos that are really useful to have that can be made in this day and age, even in isolation, the sort of content you can get out there and have created that's going to really lift your brand and explain your message and the value proposition that you're offering to the market. Then on the 2nd of June, I'm going to give a little bit of editing tips, whether you're doing it on your phone or on your desktop, for people, because there's some editing can be a real hurdle for a lot of people. So I'm just going to give some basic structure around things you want to be aware of when you're editing. Just a spoiler alert, it takes a lot longer than you think, so be prepared for that to edit. And then on the 9th of June, I'm going to talk about sharing your videos. So that's what my second book was all about, Watch Me Now, was about how to get your videos out to the marketplace to make value out of it. Because where I see a lot of people fall over is they make a great video, but then they don't tell anyone about it. And it just gathers what I call digital dust. So I'll break down some of the key things you can do there to get your videos out to the market.
Can I ask you to send details of that to Mark so that we can get it out to all the members as quickly as possible? Because you're
Absolutely.
right, at the moment video is really, really critical. Again, using my industry as an example, the real estate industry, up until last week, we weren't allowed to show properties in the traditional sense. So we
were... Tony.
Yeah, I know. So we were forced by restrictions to show properties through a video or a virtual tour. And there are a lot of people, even once the restrictions are lifted, a lot of people in the first instance, from a convenience point of view, they don't want to waste their time and physically go to a property unless they've seen it in whole in a video format. So, and I think that concept is relevant to many, many industries moving forward. So I think what the webinar that you're doing is very important. I know 2 years ago you were a major presenter at the Get Connected, and I recall your presentation was probably one of the best received presentations of the Get Connected series that Jan Boulhali's has put on for 4 years straight. And I remember I learned from your presentation how a local fruit shop. We found out we used to see him every morning, but we didn't know much about him until we saw your presentation, and we learned so much about him just through your video concept. So I think video is very, very important, and it's becoming more and more relevant, particularly after this COVID-19 experience.
And just to add to that, Tony, I think video's become even significantly more important since Google bought YouTube, and the algorithm in ranking yourself on your website, you're ranked higher when you've got video content and regular small feeds of video content. So it's really important for a whole host of reasons, and we're really proud at the City of Ryde to support Sonic Site's delivery of these webinars, which we think are vital to all businesses.
And Jen, I appreciate that. On that basis, I think while we're waiting for John Alexander, I think it's appropriate if you, I'll give you the lead, and if you could tell us what you are hoping to share with us tonight.
Okay. Well, just to start, I mean, if John comes on board, I'll put myself back in my line.
Sorry, before you go on, thank you so much, Geoff. I appreciate that information. Yep.
Thank you, Tony.
Sorry, Jane.
No, you're right. Well, first of all, I hear a lot of rhetoric that we're all in the same boat at the moment. And I disagree with that on some levels. We're not all in the same boat, but we're all in the same storm. I talk to different businesses, and some businesses are in boats that are riding this storm really well and really successfully. They've had an online presence for a long time. They're across their marketing, their planning. So they're riding this storm quite well in their boat. But then I see other people, other business owner operators in boats that are sinking, or boats that haven't had any online presence in their operations in their entirety. So we're trying to put together a suite of webinars that will suit whatever boat you're in as a business owner operator in this storm. We feel Sonic Site's videos around video production can benefit all businesses. Businesses that have never had an online presence will start to feel the benefits very quickly, having some form of video communication to their target audiences or their prospective target audiences. We also have webinars with different stakeholders around the Australian Taxation Office. They've got a suite of webinars on how to manage your tax support and stimulus measures in this time. They've got a lot of webinars on MyGovID and relationship and management of that. So we're trying to bring a suite of webinars that will suit a range of businesses, regardless of your size, sector, or where you're at in this storm. There'll be businesses that have never put a lot of time into marketing or planning their marketing. They've had a nice flow of customers and things like that. So we'll get people back to basics. And through Andrew Hill's help and Stefan's help from Sirius Media, we're going to have a suite of webinars around the importance of claiming your business listing on Google. And it doesn't matter if you're bricks and mortar or you're a service offering business, it's so essential that you get on top of the free tools that Google has to promote, operate, run your business. And COVID-19 has just accelerated the importance and the adoption of these tools, in my opinion. Businesses are starting to pivot quite well in the City of Ryde. Not all businesses, but many businesses are talking about how they're delivering online services, or they're pivoting to operations. There's a business in Ryde, while it's not in the City of Ryde, they're a Duralex paint business, and they've pivoted and they're producing hand sanitizer and bacterial sprays. So we're seeing some of our businesses pivot in those directions where they're looking at this opportunity of COVID-19. What can their business do now? So our webinars are going to be educational, informational, and hopefully inspirational. We're also going to bring out webinars around mental health and coping with the current times, because we know there are people out there in their boats who are feeling very helpless, very hopeless. They've had to let go of all their staff, which are like family, and they're really coping with a total switch off of income or revenue. And so doing a webinar on managing your cash flow will mean nothing to those people in that boat. But doing a webinar on what they could start to focus on for their recovery time might be more appropriate. We know that the state government and the federal government have got stimulus packages to support the business community. Well before COVID-19 was labelled a pandemic, our Eastwood Town Centre was hit very hard with, due to the cohort of demographics that sit in Eastwood. So we, as the local council, did get together and come up with a $500,000 stimulus hardship grant for the businesses in Eastwood. Obviously, that grant has been rolling out, and we've had applications. We've had about 250 to 300 applications from the Eastwood businesses, and the hardship grant's up to $2,000 per business. We can't do that across the whole city, but with the great support that the state government stepped up and the federal government has stepped up, we feel a lot of our businesses will be able to tap into some of those stimulus packages to get them through the next 3 to 6 months. As we know, no one's got a crystal ball, so we don't know how long quarantine or lockdown is going to be. We're hearing a little bit of news that we're going to start lightening up some of the restrictions, but that's not going to help every business. Also at council, we've got a two-phase crisis management economic development plan. Phase 1 is this suite of webinars, which is to support everyone in the current times and do what we can for businesses at all stages of their business. And then the recovery program will be focused on helping those businesses that are going to get back up on their feet. They may not have all the staff they need, or they may not have the cash flow to bring in all the staff they need initially. So we want to talk about programs where we can match graduate students with businesses and have some internship opportunities open up in your business in the recovery process. So when you get back on track, you may have a very, very well-tuned graduate who can help you with a social media strategy or a marketing plan or podcasting like Stefan does in his business. So we're looking at the recovery as well as looking at the support for the current moment in time.
Oh, that's brilliant. It's great that the City of Ryde is actually not only putting on all these webinars, but you've identified the correct topics that are required, if you like, for these times. Can I ask you, have you been able to map the success you've had, for example, say in Eastwood? Have you seen some definitive results from all the activity that you've done in Eastwood?
Well, I think what's really come out of some of the things that we're doing in Eastwood is the collaboration, how quickly people have come together to work together. So that's helping have some level of impact when we've got the Korean business chambers, we've got Eastwood business chambers, we've got the Chinese business chambers, we've got Riverside business chambers working together to support Eastwood. I think it's still very challenging times right at the moment, but I think the applications for the up to $2,000 hardship grant is going to give them a little bit of relief on top of all the other stimulus packages with state government and federal government that they can obtain. Hopefully they're tapping into the JobKeeper stimulus so they can keep some of their staff. We're hoping some people are pivoting and looking at how they can do more takeaway, home delivery, and things like that. But Eastwood was hit very hard because of their demographic, and I still think they're feeling a little bit of pain from that as well.
Sure.
So that might be an area that's going to take a little bit more attention for recovery. as people become a little bit more confident that that demographic is not a threat to them.
And Jan, from your point of view and council's point of view, what does it look like after we've come out of this? I know you've applied a lot of effort and a lot of resources and a lot of time to address these issues that we have at the moment, but is there a little bit left in it for post-COVID-19? I know I've spoken to your colleagues at council, and council's looking forward to host the Business Chamber event rather than in June this year, sometime in September, when we're all potentially able to actually physically meet again at a venue. So council has a vision well beyond COVID-19, I would assume, because this year the council elections have been deferred to, I think it's next year, so we've got the current council in for one more year in the current term. So you've no doubt got a plan moving forward after COVID-19?
We do. We're actually working on our economic development strategy for the next 4 years, and that will not just be focused on COVID-19 situations or strategies or initiatives and things like that. I think one goal, and Andrew Hill from Riverside Business Chamber and I talk about this a lot, is we'd like to see all the businesses across the city of Ryde claim their free listing on Google, because every business, whether you like it or not, whether you believe it or not, whether you want it or not, has a listing on Google. And once they claim that, they can do so many things with that listing that can enhance their presence. They can get reviews. I mean, even if you don't believe it or you don't do it, people are reviewing your business already online. So we want the whole, and it's very ambitious, but we want the whole of the city of Ryde to, at least in the business community, have claimed their free listing on Google. That just is the foundational start for many other good things that they can do in their business. Even if they don't have an online presence, they do have an online presence that they haven't put together. So the plan is to get people, and I think COVID-19 has accelerated people's adoption of technology. I think we want to continue to enhance that adoption and get everyone working like fine-oiled machines in terms of especially the free Google tools. And people like Stefan and Andrew Hill, who are such a blessing to this business community, can help our business community achieve this. And we might do this with some face-to-face once everyone gets back to some normality. But I think webinars might become a thing that will continue as well, where people can have recorded webinars and watch in their own time. I feel the City of Ryde will experience an injection of growth and upturn once we get through this. I think Council's going to do some shop local campaigns, employ local campaigns as well. I think businesses are going to be maybe inundated and will not have the capital to get staff. So we want to connect, as I said earlier, ways to have interns, give them opportunity to have experience, but also grow your business, build your business, get your business back on track with these resources. I strongly believe there's opportunity for business graduates, interns to work together till businesses are up and running and they've got that regular cash flow where they can start really employing people back into their business in a full-time capacity.
That's great, Jan. And look, I totally agree with you. My biggest fear, to be quite blunt, is that I see major opportunity coming post-COVID-19. And my biggest fear is that a lot of the businesses and a lot of our members are going to miss that opportunity because they weren't expecting it. I'm trying to impress upon as many people as possible major turn after this.
And I can hear you all now.
Because it's going to be there. Don't miss the opportunity. So thank you, Jane. I think we have our federal member, John Alexander, online. Is that you, John? Thank you, Jane. Thank you for that great summary. And we look forward to working with you month in, month out, as we do, particularly with Andrew and Stefan. So thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And, do we have John Alexander online?
I did hear him come through. We've been having a technical problem like those little monsters do, but we're trying to get John on there as soon as possible. Oh, there we go.
Hello.
John, can you hear us?
Good. I can hear you. I can see you.
Oh, there you are.
On a very small screen.
Thank you for joining us tonight.
My pleasure.
I know you've been extraordinarily busy, and I know you've been doing a lot of work in the background, a lot of invisible work that a lot of people don't see and haven't been seen. I know some of us get your Friday afternoon updates, but before I ask you some specific questions, how are you feeling? How are you're exhausted, or you're doing well?
No, I'm very well because, yeah, I'm getting more exercise. I'm not having to go to events at night, which is very tiring, working days. So, yeah, I can't claim any great stress other than it's unusual. My world consists of going from here at my apartment in Epping to the office in Epping. My staff is on a rotation. I turn up 5 days a week and they each turn up 1 day a week. Now, I've done a very bad job of managing that. And we've done a lot of work on policies, on various concerns that we have regarding property and the impact that COVID virus might have on our home values and investments. And I've also pushed very, very hard when we're looking at the road to recovery. The inquiry that we had commenced regarding the financing of rail, which was essentially about how do we fund infrastructure, which is now more important than ever because it will be difficult to be funding any infrastructure out of consolidated revenues because our tax revenues will be stretched to the limit and beyond. We won't be able to go into more debt to fund infrastructure. We won't be able to reduce other services to fund infrastructure. So the day of value capture is going to be forced upon us. And it's a big job to get people to, a lot of people, to even understand the concept, let alone appreciate what it can do on our road to recovery, to stimulate the economy through having major infrastructure projects funded by value capture. So we've got more and more support from those who understand what value capture is. We've already received some very interesting evidence. One extraordinary piece of evidence which tells us the great mistakes that we have made in the past, because when we did the inquiry entitled Capturing Value, Delivering Infrastructure, we urged that action be taken very quickly so that we didn't suffer the same consequences that we suffered when building the Northwest Rail Line, and no capture of value was made, and that this must be remedied before we go forth with Badgerys Creek. And one of the pieces of evidence that we received is that a well-known property developer who was in jail for murder had bought land at Badgerys Creek for $2.5 million that's now valued at $500 million of taxpayers' monies being invested. So where is the fair return for our taxpayers? So I think people are now starting to understand what we need to do, and we need to do it very quickly.
I think to summarise it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, John, value capture, if I was to summarise it in a few words, is we'll let you build a little bit more, but you've got to pay for it and give it back to the government to support infrastructure. Is that it in a nutshell?
No, that could be a part of it. It could be a very small part of it. But essentially, it is whenever someone has an unearned benefit, because of the investment of our taxpayers' money in infrastructure, that the unearned beneficiary should contribute to the cost of that infrastructure.
Sure, sure. And look, it's encouraging to know that the government's looking post-COVID-19 in terms of infrastructure and in terms of recovery and putting some strategies in place for recovery, because we all know not only the value capture component, but we all know that not only does infrastructure give us long-term benefits as a society, but during the phase of putting the infrastructure in place, it employs thousands and thousands of people. And there's a massive multiplier that comes from that employment. Every one of those people who are employed, they spend money, they take their kids to school, they shop, they do all sorts of things. And it's the employment that during that infrastructure that's really, really important. So it's good that the government is thinking, you know, like future planning. But can I ask you, we are in one of the hotspots for COVID-19, you know, Ryde, Macquarie Park. And can you share with us a little bit from your perspective as how the government's managed to sort of contain the spread of COVID-19 within the hotspot that is Ryde and Macquarie Park and potentially Epping? Because you seem to have done a great job nationally, but what have you done for us at a localised level? Because we were one of the danger spots, weren't we?
Well, we were one of the first to set up a COVID-19 testing facility in Macquarie Park, which is very important. It's sort of like a field hospital, so it's both to cope with the possible stresses on the medical system if there was too many COVID-19 cases at hospitals, and also it has a separate wing to test and treat people for or with COVID-19. It's, you know, this is an unprecedented situation. So it's very easy to look back now a few weeks or a couple of months later and say, oh, we could have done this better, or we could have done that better. But I think we have had extraordinary agility to move very quickly to things as we started to learn the nature of this. And we're learning more and more about it every day. And I think we have done very, very well. I mean, we have had, as tragic as every death is, we have had, I think it's only 91 deaths in the entire country. Now, and the great majority of those are people with comorbidities over the age of 70. There really is only a very, very small number of people who you could say really this COVID-19 has taken their life. In that if somebody is in their 90s and they have 2 or 3 other conditions, it's a part of the reason, but it's a very, very small part of the reason, no more so than a normal flu season. 2017, we lost 1,400 people to flu, and the great majority of those were people over 70 and with comorbidities, the great majority, as in the US, to 18. They lost over 70,000 to that flu year, which corresponded with ours, and their normal fatalities from flu is about 39,000 a year. So COVID-19, badly handled, can be many times worse than a bad flu season. Well handled, which is the case we have to this point, is it's going to be possibly less than a bad flu season. And 90 at the moment, and we seem to have it under control, is much less. But the thing that the Prime Minister now is talking about is we have to cope with the cost of having taken this very extreme action in really closing down our economy. And I think there is bipartisan, it's an ill wind that blows no good. One good issue is that there has been bipartisan agreement in the actions that we have taken. And now the big test is, what can we do to, one, build the bridge to the other side in some issues, and then how do we rebuild our economy on the other side, and with the real knowledge that we have learnt some very valuable lessons. We have made a lot of mistakes over the last 20, 30, 40 years with the management of our economy. We've had times when we have maybe been able to afford making mistakes, making mistakes like not fully capitalising on the investment in infrastructure, but, oh, we had the money, we could do it anyway, that sort of attitude. But we don't have the money now, and so we've got to run a far more just, equitable and fair situation where those who have unearned benefits contribute very significantly to the cost of the infrastructure that gives them those windfalls.
Can I ask, as I think we're all proud here in Australia for the way that we've handled this crisis, and as you say, we're better off than most places around the world. But can I ask, in Australia, we're going into winter, whereas most of the other countries are going into summer. Has the government got a plan for a potential sort of second wave, if that was to sort of come in place?
Well, yes, I think the understanding that we're gaining is that vitamin D is a key ingredient to having a resistance to COVID-19. So,
are you sure?
Sorry?
Are you sure?
Am I sure? I'm saying this is the developing understanding. There's any number of studies that are being made that are leading us to this understanding that in colder, wintry climates, COVID-19 is more prolific. In sunny, warmer climes, it is less so. Exposure to sunlight gives you vitamin D, so does milk and eggs and various other things. But that is an important thing. But it's also to say that your level of health and resistance is very, very key to the nature of the disease. It goes from mild to wild. Initially, we didn't understand at all, but we do understand that the stronger your general health is, the more resistance that you have built up in your system, the better you will cope and resist. And for instance, Prince Charles hardly had a sniffle, and others hardly had a sniffle. And Boris Johnson, who obviously has a very stressful life, very long hours, was nearly taken outright. So he was obviously in a weakened condition when he was contracted, and also he may have had multiple exposures. So there's another issue that we don't quite understand. If you have multiple exposures, are you likely to get a more severe bout of this disease? And that would appear, I mean, anecdotally, it would appear to be so, because we have relatively healthy workers in health, in the nurses and doctors, who obviously getting multiple exposures, and they're healthy and strong and fit, but they have got stressful jobs, they've got long hours, and they are having multiple exposures. So there has been a disproportionate number of people working in health who have actually died of COVID-19 who were not in the at-risk group, not in the over 60 group. So we're understanding more and more. We're getting feelings to lean one way or another. They're not conclusive findings at this point. But, as we develop our understanding, we've sort of got certain leanings that we're thinking this is a likely way that we'll be going.
And I know you're not going to give us any sort of breaking news or leaks before this coming Friday, the 8th of May. But do you see, like everyone else, that the restrictions are going to start progressively being eased sort of week in, week out as we move forward?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things I hear is the nuance of it. and it's the fine-tuning of it that, as we can learn from some countries that tried to protect those at risk and tried to have the rest of the economy run normally, that we may be able to incrementally bring into the workplace people who are not at risk, albeit practicing social distancing and far higher levels of hygiene than what we did in the past, and commence life as usual. The very important issue of the app is that if there is a breakout, that it can be treated like a spot fire, and we can put it out, and we'll know who met who and be able to chase it down and extinguish that. So that's really an ongoing strategy, I think, will allow us to have a normal life, go back into business, get our economy rolling along again to an extent, but rather than have a further shutdown in the future because there's an explosion, that we'll be able to monitor it very, very carefully. And if you get, for instance, what happened, I think it was in Burnie, where there was a breakout, you can close an area down and address it and not let it spread. Or an aged care centre, where you've had a breakout. On a cruise liner where there was a breakout, detect it, lock it down, and let the rest of the world get on with life. So I think that's the way we're moving, but we don't want to undo all the hard work that we've done and all of the cost that's gone into this, only to have it re-emerge and we're back where one. So it has to be incrementally, slowly, prudently, a high level of intelligence. And I don't think that decision has been made. I think it will be, obviously it's been worked on day in, night and day, and Friday there will be the final agreement sought by the states, and hopefully there is a greater level of agreement, not like what's happened in education, where there's been states that have been reluctant to adhere to the medical evidence, where we understand children, if they get it very mildly, and because they've got it so mildly, they don't pass it on, and they don't give it, it's not a problem. But then people say, why can't we have kids sport? Well, with kids sport is all the adults are standing on the sidelines close to each other.
Yes.
Schools, you drop the kid off, the kid goes into school, they're not got the parents around passing it on to each other. It's more dangerous, as they say, in the teachers' common room, where teachers might pass it on to each other. But these things, when we say, schools are safe, but junior sport might not be, trust me, they've thought about this long and hard. The first comment, oh, well, at school, why can't they play sport? It's because the parents would be close. So if you want to be able to, maybe the conditions of opening up the sports fields will be, you must drop your child off at the sports field like you do at school, and you must vacate before the next parent arrives, or whatever the rules would be. But I think there's a lot of deep consideration that goes into each and every measure that's being taken. There is so much invested as to where we've gotten. We don't want to blow that money that we've spent.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Can I finally ask you, and I always like to focus on this, as far as Bennelong's concerned, the city of Ryde, Macquarie Park, what's coming from you for Bennelong? Because we've all had to pause and sort of adapt for the last 2 months, but we've got to move forward. Some people saying we're going into a boom. Some people were saying we're going into a recession. How do you see Macquarie Park, Bennelong moving forward post-COVID-19?
Well, there's lots of fronts. One of the areas that we're working on a great deal in the office is our Bennelong Village business campaign that we've been running now for, we're in the 10th year. And that was born out of the aftermath of the global financial crisis, when all sorts of small businesses were really struggling. And then Woolworths and Coles were doing the dirty and having cheap milk to lure people away from small shops. So we started that. And we've been continuing that ever since. And it's been a very successful engagement with the community, very helpful to small businesses in villages. Now, there is every likelihood that the easing of restrictions will apply to these small businesses. And so we've done a lot of work, a lot of creative work, and we'll be releasing this in the next week or two of how we can assist our small businesses come out and have a coming out party. How do you engage with your small business? How do you support them to get them back on their feet? Can we start pre-booking restaurant tables from the time it's open? Whatever we can do, but we're tossing around a lot of ideas. We're working something up, but we will be hitting the ground running, doing each village to stimulate local traffic back into those villages and get them kick-started again, because that's such a valuable asset. We had very, very good news over the weekend regarding Angus Taylor's $300 million commitment to hydrogen power, both as a way of powering vehicles and an export market. This has in large part come from our last inquiry, which was into alternate energies, mass transit, autonomous vehicles. And our strongest recommendation was the investigation of hydrogen power for buses, trucks, trains, ships, and long-distance cars. And that Hyundai, who are headquartered in Macquarie Park, have the first hydrogen filling station. They're very active in this area. Scott Nager, who I spoke to today, and Bill Thomas from Hyundai are delighted with this. We're trying to get Angus Taylor to come to our first Bennelong forum after the lights come back on again to host an event at Hyundai. They've got hydrogen vehicles. They've got 20 of them in their holding tank there at Macquarie Park, and they're wanting to have companies in Macquarie Park take up leases on these vehicles to show that we are embracing and we are supporting clean energy that genuinely is clean. Genuinely is clean. I don't know whether you've seen the Planet of the Humans, the Michael Moore YouTube, but it raises a lot of questions. But there is no question at all about hydrogen power and our ability to make it an export industry that can replace other things that we export that aren't liked by everyone. So it's a very, very interesting moment for us. And I think that our thinking outside of the paradigm is very, very important on any number of issues. But I think there's reason for optimism, and we're going to start from ground level again, and hopefully rebuild everything even better, albeit there's a big cost to pay.
And I understand this Friday you have the Small Business Minister, Michaela Cash, speaking with the chamber members.
That's right. We've got Michaela coming on Friday. A Zoom Bennelong forum tomorrow with Michael Sukkar, who's the Minister for Housing, who I've been engaged on housing, because we've got to find ways of protecting people's home ownership. And we've got a lot of luminaries working in this area. Ken Henry has engaged with me, offering his advice. I've talked to Anna Bligh, two of Australia's top bankers, most senior bankers, Mark Burrows and Mark Joyner, have been very generous with their advice and engagement. And I've been working with Adam Clark from Treasury, from Josh Frydenberg's office, to try to advance these things, because we in Bennelong had the biggest uplift of anywhere in Australia, 74% 3 years, 100% 5 years of real estate values. And so we are vulnerable to a bigger correction than anywhere else. So what I'm working on is of particular importance to those who bought homes in the last 10 years, homes or apartments in Bennelong. So we want to protect that investment and find a bridge to get them over to when prices recover, and not have people lose their homes and investments.
Well, you're doing a great job, John. Thank you so much for being with us tonight and sharing your insights and all the great work that you've done and that you're doing. And, you know, the Chamber's there to support you. So we really appreciate your time and all the effort. So thank you very much. Thank you, John.
Thank you and your Chamber, because, you know, I think this is the essence of those who will be the architects of our recovery, and we will work closer and better and in greater unison than ever before. And we will have to, but it's an ill wind that blows no good. When there's a common enemy, we will pull together and fight that common enemy. And, you know, success is mutual. No one person will have success. We will all have success if we pull together. So that's the challenge.
Well said, and we're there with you all the way. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you. So now I think we've got Victor Dominello on the line. Is Victor there, Andrew?
Can you see me, Tony?
I can't. Now I can. Hey,
All
Victor.
Right. Hey.
How are you?
Good. I literally just got home, so sorry about the background.
Just got home?
Yeah.
Thank you. We were just talking to John Alexander, who shared a lot of with us from the federal space and all the great things that the federal government's done and doing and going to do. So, so I wanted to talk to you at a state level because from the federal point of view, they've told us all about what they're doing to sort of mitigate the losses and minimise the people who are affected by COVID-19. And as I've just said, they've done a great job, particularly seeing Ryde and Macquarie Park and the like, who are one of the hotspots. But I'd like to talk to you. Firstly, I'll ask you the same question I asked John. How are you coping with all the background work and the invisible work and all the work that you guys do that none of us ever see? So how are you going?
Well, thanks, Tony. And again, thanks to the Chamber for inviting me and sharing the experience. So, because I know how hard it is for us, it's even harder for the business community, who is quite frankly right in the front line of this in terms of the impact. So, thanks for the opportunity. Look, my world has changed. The way that we saw the ministry before has changed. So I'm sitting at CEOC every morning. CEOC's the State Emergency Operations Centre at Homebush. So we meet up there at 7:30 every morning, and basically there's the Premier, there's the Deputy Premier, there's the Treasurer, there's myself and the Health Minister. We have the Police Commissioner. We have Kerry Chant, the Chief Medical Health Officer, and 2 or 3 other senior health bureaucrats in the state. And basically we're driving a lot of the leadership discussion and thoughts about where the state is from there. Obviously then that radiates out to Cabinet and then to MP. So yeah, our world has changed in terms of the way decisions are being made. And you would have seen how we're now trying to compartmentalise the reforms on a month-by-month basis. So, you know, this month, the Premier already foreshadowed towards the end of April that this month was going to be about, you know, getting more retail back online, again, in a safer or a new environment. It's about having more social restrictions eased, and that way we had 2 people outside, now 2 people plus dependents inside in terms of visitation. And then the third element of the reform for this month has been around making sure that we get kids back to school ASAP. So obviously we're building that up. You know, so we initially said 11 May, but you know, if we can move it faster, we will. So because that's the biggest impact to the economy. So when we're at CEOC, you know, I'm the data guy there, and you know, I'm helping health with the modelling, bringing all the data together, so we can actually get a laser-like approach to modelling, and we're working with Treasury as to where the high impacts are, high economic impact, low health risk, and the biggest one, without a shadow of a doubt, and you know, the Prime Minister's been solid on this, is around education. But you know, initially in the first phase of the campaign, understandably, everybody was freaking out. To be honest, let's be frank about it. You know, when there's a pandemic, the first thing that takes control is fear, because you can say everything's safe, but when you're seeing reports overseas and you're seeing videos overseas of body bags coming out of hospitals, the first impulse is fear. That's why people go to toilet paper and all these crazy, irrational things. But we're trying now desperately to bed down and calm that. You know, we've got independent reports now saying school is a safe environment. We still need to create a new environment, hand sanitation, you know, temperature checks, a whole lot of things that are different in the new world. But that's where we're going. So right now we're starting to model up what June looks like. Again, it has to work with the national framework, but the thing about the national framework is very much like Australia, there is no one size fits all. The problems or the challenges that Western Australia have, very different to what we have, very different to the territory, very different to Tasmania. You know, we're in a very much a Goldilocks position. Now we were the first state hit in many ways because of the diversity, and because we are, let's be frank, we are the international city. So our Sydney port is where most of the traffic comes through. So as a result, we were the biggest hit. There's no doubt about that. Then Victoria, and obviously we've got the two big relations. But you know, we need to make sure that we nuance our approach, which is good for the people of our state, as opposed to say Victoria, Western Australia, South Australia, etc., that are different places in the world.
I think it's a great thing, the fact that you're aware of those differences between different cities, different states, different dynamics. I think the fact that you're aware of those differences and you make the appropriate decisions is very, very important. And as we said with John earlier, you're making good, prudent decisions with very little precedent, because no one's been through it before. So you're making good decisions, particularly compared to other places that we read about around the world. Can I bring it down to our area and our city of Ryde and Bennelong and the city of Ryde? We're having some good news, like despite the fact that we were a hot spot and a danger spot, thankfully we haven't had too many people pass away in our area. But it appears through you the state government is focusing on coming out of this and focusing on the future. We've had some good news in the last week where the state government, through you no doubt, has fast-tracked the redevelopment of the Ivanhoe estate. They've also funded...
Yeah, I've been a very big advocate for that.
Absolutely. And they've also fast-tracked and funded, to my knowledge, the Meadowbank West Ryde TAFE schools.
I know. I've been a strong advocate of those two. They are huge, both of them.
And that's going to really be a great economic multiplier for our precinct. You know, when can we expect those schools to open and the new TAFE down there?
Well, we're very much still on track for 2022. I've got an announcement in my back pocket in relation to contracts and stuff like that. Everything's pretty much ready to go. Site's been cleared. And the beauty think about, like, we are so well positioned here, particularly around the TAFE and the education precinct down there. Like, think about what we've got in Macquarie University and the business park there. If we can set up an precinct, a sister employment precinct down in Meadowbank West Ryde as well, and then the TAFE becomes a focus for digital transformation, like, you know, whether it's cybersecurity, digital trades. You know, the world post-COVID, trust me, I know this as much as anybody in the state. We're already working on Project Spring, which is what, let me walk back. There are three phases traditionally of a pandemic. There's response. What do you do quickly? Shut borders, do it quickly. Then there is suppression. You maintain, and then clearly in the suppression phase, where if we see the damn thing pop up in Hornsby, crap. If we see it in a school, nail it down. Where you do localised suppression rather than big shutdowns, because shutdowns hurt everybody. Then the third phase is recovery. But the fourth phase is where I'm already starting to look, and the rest of the leadership is starting to look. What does the new New South Wales look like? So recovery would be, all right, let's fast track, I don't know, let's fast track education precinct. But what does the new New South Wales look like? And that is, again, more services that are going to be like this, let's be frank, more video conferencing, more cyber security. Because your office is now at home, which makes your home a cyber threat, a cyber risk. So we need more industries around that space. So, and what we're building in the TAFE in Meadowbank, it is absolutely going to be the preeminent TAFE for digital in the country. So it is just super exciting, these things coming on, and they're absolutely on track for 2022 opening.
Well, I'm personally aware that internationally, the state government's recognised for what's known as the e-government platform.
Yeah.
And obviously you're a key driver of that. And I'm looking forward to the fact that the City of Ryde is going to be quite a significant hub around sort of e-government, but not only e-government, the way we move forward post-COVID-19 in Macquarie Park and the City of Ryde, the way we run our businesses, because prior to you coming on, we were all talking about what's the opportunity for our businesses post-COVID-19. And that's what everyone, because you said earlier, there's a lot of fear, and people tend to be driven by fear. But there's an opportunity, and the biggest fear that a lot of us have is that the opportunity that's coming, we all miss it. Now, you've already managed to sort of help kickstart, if you like, our local economy with those two projects. And I'm not going to sort of put you under pressure and ask for breaking news, but no doubt you've got plans for our city post-COVID-19 along the lines of what you're doing with e-government and New South Wales.
And not just for our city. I'll be honest with you, Tony, the big things happening in our city are obviously all the schools we're building, the two major precincts that we've already now fast-tracked, and obviously the West Ryde Meadowbank includes the widening of Victoria Road, and then on the other side we've got the interchange that the Feds, through John's advocacy, kicked in $80 million towards. So, and then there's the redevelopment at Macquarie, including the ice rink and all that. So, on both sides of the electorate, we got some massive projects and massive projects underway. But then from the digital perspective, it is, I can't give too much away, but that is just going to be turbocharged, without a doubt. Like already e-planning, we're mandating e-planning. So 42 metropolitan councils, they have to start that journey on the 1st of July, and they must complete it by the end of the year. And that means every planning thing you want to do online. You don't have to go into Ryde Council, find a car park, get a ticket, wait, and then get a letter in the mail. Everything will be online. You'll get a personalised dashboard. Like, this will be the biggest single reform to planning we've ever seen, the e-planning. And now we're starting to work through the e-construction, certifiers online, engineers online, surveyors online, everything, because one of the biggest multipliers in our economy is the construction industry. But if that is paper-based and banked into the 20th century, how do you move that forward? So, the big vision that I want for the state is to, we talk about the fintech, the construction tech, because already with e-planning, we will have one of the most sophisticated planning systems in the world. We've got the digital twin digitising pretty much in 3D and 4D everywhere from Parramatta to Penrith, and it'd be great if Ryde Council could be part of that as well. So we see things in the digital world. That is the biggest in the world. Lend-Lease have said that alone produces a 20% efficiency. Again, we're not talking about some small player. Lend-Lease are saying 20% efficiency out of that, because they can now model where to put the cranes, when to put the cranes. We've done e-property, e-planning, e-construction, strata portals about to be launched in a pilot phase. It is the transformation, if I had my way, over the next 6 to 12 months will be breathtaking.
Look, those things are critical coming out of COVID-19, because there are a lot of pinch points or pain points in a lot of people's processes and procedures in their relative respective businesses. And with all this e-planning, sort of regeneration, if you like, it takes away all these pinch points and pain points and allows us to get on with doing business. It allows us to start employing more people, generate revenue. And governments love when businesses generate revenue, because it means we can afford to pay more taxes, so the whole world goes around. Let me ask you, there was a talk a couple of weeks ago that the state government was talking about bringing forward $55 billion worth of infrastructure work. Now, I like that sort of talk, because the one hidden thing behind infrastructure work is the number of people that it employs. And you mentioned the word multiplier before. Employment for me is a multiplier, because every time you employ someone, those people, they have families, they eat, they spend money, they buy properties, they buy cars, they go shopping, they interact, they take their kids to school. It's a massive, massive multiplier. Is it likely those that infrastructure work will come forward?
Oh, definitely. I'm sitting on a committee inside a cabinet, a subcommittee inside a cabinet that's actually looking through that now. So, we've got the largest infrastructure pipeline ever in the state's history. It's nudging $100 billion over 4 years, which is just insane. And we're already going through that now. We had a pre-COVID lens on that. Now we're looking at a post-COVID lens in terms of what can we accelerate that couldn't accelerate before. So absolutely, and I'm sitting on a delivery committee inside a cabinet that's going through that reprioritisation now. If I could just also add, Tony, in terms of businesses, in things that I can control, Service New South Wales, everyone knows about Service. We're starting to build up Service for Business. In the same way, an individual can go to Service and get a really good customised approach. We want to have the same experience for business, so they get a business concierge. We've already set up the $10,000 grants. We're looking at how we can loosen the criteria to enable more businesses to apply in most of those grants. But these are the things we're looking at, because you're spot on. Every dollar we can put into business, we get a multiple return back. But again, I've got to emphasise, it's got to be in a new operating environment, because if we you look around the world now, and some governments have gone really hard, and then they are saying, all right, no, everyone go back out. It's a big gamble, because the gamble there is, if you go hard, shut down everything, like say in the US or in some parts of the world, or in Spain, shut down everything, real hard shutdown for a long period of time. People get restless, then they say, stuff you, I'll do my own thing, open everything back up. You're opening up the environment for a second wave. And never forget, the Spanish pandemic, Spanish flu, it was the second wave that was most destructive. So we've just got to be careful to do this in a very measured, smart way, because if we go too hard too quick, the one thing we can't afford is to go back out, then have another wave, and then say to business, sorry, you're shutting down again, because that would put us into a depression, quite frankly. The last thing we can do to business is say, go to market, take a risk again, come back out. They'll never go back to market. The only people going back to market the second time will be the absolute risk takers. Everybody else will say, sorry, I'm not going back, it's too high risk. So we've got to be very measured in our approach. And but having said that, you know, in the Northern Territory, they've got no cases there. Western Australia, they were an island anyway, they didn't succeed. Whereas with us, we're in that sort of Goldilocks position, bigger state. We don't want to be positioned like Victoria where they are shutting down everything pretty much. We're trying to position ourselves as opening up as much as we can within a new context. Because when we open up, we want it to be sustainable.
Look, I'm sure not only myself, but everyone agrees with you. The last thing we want is to go backwards.
No,
the important thing for me, and this was reflected by John's comments, you seem to have managed it really well, but you've also got a plan sort of post-COVID-19, which is very important, because that's
and
where
and that's the most exciting thing for me. I love it. As I said, the new, ask yourself, each of you can think of what the new New South Wales would look like in terms of service delivery, in terms of making it better and easier for business, in terms of you know, a deregulation, decluttered society. You know, what does the new New South Wales look like? And that's what we're building towards. And that's, you know, we've all gone through a lot of pain. Some people have lost lives. A lot of people lost businesses. Everyone's had a confidence hit. We've had intergenerational debt now weighed upon us. We've got to get something good out of this. And that's what the new New South Wales, the new Australia should look towards.
And I'd like to think that the city of Ryde, Bennelong, Macquarie, we're going to be at the forefront of that sort of new New South Wales and new growth, and we're going to be leaders in our respective businesses in that new vision.
Absolutely. You got all the ingredients here.
So thank you very much, Victor. Thank you for all the great work that you're doing, that John Alexander is doing. I think we're really lucky to have you guys at the helm there, looking after us. And as I said to John, we're there to support you as a business.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And look forward to working with you and John. Likewise, we work with the council and try and sort of add value wherever we can as businesses. So really appreciate all the great stuff that you're doing.
All right, thanks, Tony. And again, thanks for the opportunity to have me on this late.
No, you're more than welcome. Thank you very much. So now we've got one of our very good members, Soraya. Are you there, Soraya?
Yes, I am. Hello.
How are you?
Good.
That's good. It's good to see you again. Now, you're going to tell us about my great success and all the great stuff that you've done. And unfortunately, your sessions are on hold temporarily just for this last couple of months. Is that correct?
Yes. I was a bit devastated when, you know, all the workshops was closed. But then the more I thought about it, I realized that when all this is over, for every 10 jobs, there will be 100 people applying. And what about the migrants, you know, with their lack of English and Australian ways and all. So what I decided is I did as many courses as possible. Thank you, Jan, which were really useful. And I've always been afraid of technology. I'm a face-to-face person. So what I started was, now, I can't believe it that I'm good at meeting Zoom, and that's the way to go. Embrace the technology without fear. And what I've done is I did a trial on teaching English to migrants through Zoom, and that worked. I even got someone from China who is stuck there to do English classes. So the next step is I've actually revisited my entire program and sort of revised it to do online workshops. So I'm really excited
is it working?
to support me in that particular area. So, you know, I think what COVID has done is there's been challenges, but what we really have to think is think beyond the square. How do we move forward with our business? Instead of just sitting back, yes, you can be depressed and other things, but you have to move forward. And that's what I've done.
Can you just tell everyone exactly what the program involves with the migrants?
Yes, what I do is I've got a program called Step Up to Your Success, and there are 5 workshops I had. And the first one is about, I believe you need the foundation before you go and search for jobs, and how do you interact in your business environment, social environment. So I start with looking your best. Things are different in this country to what it is wherever you are from. I follow them on, and I teach them about the techniques of writing their resumes, the different ways that we interview here, and increasingly more online interviews, how to project your best self. So I teach them to also explore their core skills. Are there other areas that they can enter, not just specifically what they were trained to? And then I teach them some of the interview techniques, particularly the STAR system. And following on from that, what do you do in the office once you get employed? How do you interact? How do you do your internal networking within that? Then following on from that, I teach them about just basic things. I was surprised that many people were interested even in dining etiquette. They were scared to entertain clients, or even for that, even with their bosses, a lot of interviews were in coffee shops or over dinner, highly skilled jobs. So they were appreciative of that part. Following on from that, what I teach them is about Australian culture, what it means, how do you slowly integrate, not assimilate, but integrate and be part of society. And one of my main focus has been on volunteering. And I found those attendees who have embraced volunteering found it actually accelerated their integration, and also they felt more comfortable to voice what they want. So that's been really fantastic. Along with it, Tony, I've also started writing my memoir, and that's all about my trials and tribulations of my migrant journey.
That's great. A lot of that content, it'd be very hard to get that in one place. So that sounds really interesting. You're obviously adding a lot of value and helping kickstart a lot of people into not only general society, but into a great role or profession. So that's great. And I know you've had great support from Jan Boulhali and the City of Ryde. They've supported you. I know I spoke at one of your sessions last year, and I was quite impressed by the energy in the room that I saw, and that was obviously a reflection of all the content that you've been delivering. So there was a lot of energy there, and I could see there were a lot of smiles and a lot of confidence. So it's obviously working.
Could I just add, Tony?
Yes, Jane.
I was just going to add that her program, Soraya's program, Mondays with Soraya, has also impacted migrants practically, where they've started to network with each other. And a Russian spoke to an Indian who had a job in IT, who could help him get a job. And so the connections that these migrants are making outside of their own ethnicity groups has been really, really valuable. And they create like a family-like environment with each other, and they start having impacts as in helping each other get jobs or go to someone that can help them get a job. So as well as the practical skills that Soraya teaches them, there's also the networking and coming together outside of their ethnicity groups that has been a bit of a hurdle for them to integrate when they get comfortable with their own people, and this has helped enormously. So council's very happy to have someone like Soraya in our area, and we're encouraging her to take it to other councils, because there's lots of other areas that have high migrant populations, as the City of Ryde does have a lot of skilled migrants.
See, let me say, when you look at what Soraya is doing and how council's supporting it, it's not something that you would normally think of off the top of your head. It's not something in terms of under the auspices of economic development, but there are a lot of people there obviously in need, and they have a a requirement for this sort of service, and you've found a niche, and you obviously fill in that niche, and you're adding a lot of value to a lot of people. So it's a credit to you. It's a credit to Council for their support, but it's also great that, Soraya, you've been able to capture this, all this content and to deliver it the way you do. So good work. So now you've converted it to an online platform, is that correct?
Yeah, that's what I'm working on, and I've done some of the programs I'm looking at, and I think we can probably reach a larger audience at different times, and I think that will be really good. But what I'm excited is the fact that I have a holistic program, which the others, you don't get that from the other areas, and that is what excites me, and giving them a certificate, which you did. You gave a certificate to each one of them the last time, and they really love it.
Yeah, well, keep up the great work, and obviously not only through Council, but we through the Chamber will promote your program and continue to promote your program, because I know it's doing a lot of good for a lot of people who are in need of it. So we're certainly behind you all the way. So great work, Soraya. That's fantastic. Keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you, Jan, and the Council and the Riverside Chamber.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Now, as a final point, do we still have Dr. Felix online? Or has he left us?
He might have gone, and you've got about... Yeah, he's not there at the moment. But one of the things, for the ones who are here, you've got some valuable content there. Definitely ring in for our next meeting as well, because, Tony, I thought that was great how you are interviewing people, and we can hear so much more about all the other small businesses.
Yeah, Andrew, our Vice President, has just reminded me to remind all of you that we want to bring you all together. Use the phrase, as I said earlier, socially distant but closer. And what we're looking forward to do, we're encouraging you all our members and non-members who want to be members, and those who want to network within our City of Ryde and Macquarie Park community, put together a video, call Geoff Anderson, or do your own, or use great tips from his webinars, put together a video. And what we'd like to do is take that video and we want to promote it through our network. But even further than that, we want to actually record an interview with you, because video will give one perspective, but an interview will give a greater insight into who you are, what you do, where you've come from, where you are now, but more importantly, where you're going and how you can add value through your product or service to everyone within the Chamber, but those outside of the Chamber, because our brief is to make sure that you not only survive, but you thrive. And in fact, you multiply that success and that growth post-COVID-19. And that's really, really important for us. If you said to me, as a business chamber, what would define our success, I would say to you that we have a large membership who are all successful in their own right. To me, that means that as a business chamber, we've been successful because we've helped you along the journey. So I really, really encourage you to contact us, contact Geoff Anderson, do it yourself, whichever way. Start with a video that promotes you and your business, and then let's go to the next level and do a live interview, or, well, it won't be a dead interview, but it's an interview. Let's do an interview that sort of adds more value and promotes you. But I also encourage you to take advantage of all the work that Jan Boulhali's done with the City of Ryde through Andrew and Stefan Soika. Stefan, for those of you who don't know, was president of this chamber, was president of the Ryde Macquarie Park Chamber, Rotarian. He's a performer. He operates. He's everywhere. Where there's activity, where there's vitality, there's Stefan. Where there's a bit of noise, there's Stefan. So I encourage you to take on all the programs that Jane's doing, because the more people that take on those programs, the more successful the programs are. And it just multiplies out from there. So we're really keen on making sure that everyone thrives after this COVID-19. And if there's any ideas that you have where we can add value to you, we want to hear from you. We want to hear from you because, as you can see, we've got a very strong connection with the City of Ryde. We've got a very strong connection with our federal and state members. We build that connection and that relationship, and we see how through that connection and relationship we can add value to you. And that's what we're all on about. So I encourage you to participate. I encourage you to network. I encourage you to grow. And particularly, I would impress upon you, do not miss the opportunity that's coming past COVID-19, right? Whether it's a recession, whether it's a boom, either way, there's going to be an opportunity for each and every one of us. And I would encourage you to look for that opportunity as far as your business is concerned. So I think that's all I've got to say. Is there any final words from Mark or Andrew or any of the executive?
From my side, well done, everybody. I think that was a great meeting, so well done.
Thank you all. Thank you one and all. I appreciate you being with us this month, and I look forward to seeing you all again next month. And there you go, there's Stefan. That's Stefan. What did I tell you? That's Stefan. And like, I mean, you can't see him under all of that, but I promise you that's Stefan.
Also, may the 4th be with you, Monday.
A great way to finish off the meeting. All right. Good night, all. Take care and stay safe. All of it.
Bye.
Good night. Bye-bye.
No, later. Thank you. Great meeting. So, where's the... I am.